Had a great conversation with Ryan Dicken. We talked about how the trades have changed. It's harder to find individuals. Ryan gave us some great advice about people getting into the apprenticeship program, uh, things that he looks for technicians that will succeed, which is passion and a drive to learn. And finally, if you ever want to get into a leadership role or foreman role, well, guess what? If the people aren't already coming to you, chances are you're not the future foreman or the service manager that you thought that you might be. This coming up next. I'm here with Ryan Dicken. I'm very excited. This is a gentleman that has lots of years of experience hiring heavy duty mechanics in the trades. And I wanted to interview Ryan for a couple of reasons. One, he is one of the few managers that understands that policies are a guideline and that although a policy is made to be followed, usually 90% of the time the situations call for common sense and judgment, and the policy is there as a guide. Next, I really like that whenever Ryan sees a problem, not only does he fix it, but he spends a lot of time trying to figure out how not to have that mistake or issue come up again so he doesn't have to fix it again. And thirdly, he has one of the lowest turnover rates in a service department, and guys and girls just love working for him. And whenever he's had to fire people, they tend to give him a hug at the end saying, "Thank you. That was one of the best terminations I've ever had." And so I thought it would be very interesting to just have a conversation and spend some time figuring out what your strategies are, looking for heavy duty technicians. And my goal with this interview is one, to help recruiters sort of understand that trades are a little bit different sometimes than the
Mhm,
typical office worker recruitment, and also for individuals that are looking to either get into the trade or are in the trade and are just having a
mhm,
tough time getting an interview or a job. Maybe some of the tips that you provide here today will help them out. So to start,
sure.
just give us a little bit of your career progression. You got into the trades at a very early age, not by choice. So let's start with that.
Correct. Yeah, I got into the mechanics trade by pedigree, I guess, in a manner of speaking. I started busting tires and basically holding wrenches and stuff when I was about 10 years old in a bus company that my parents owned. Um, Through that whole process, I moved on to start managing one of the companies as well. But while I was doing that kind of thing, I figured that I might as well learn how to fix them as well. So I started my apprenticeship. I finished my heavy duty apprenticeship in a few years. Took me about 4 years, like it should. And then after that, we carried on, and my family decided that they were going to close the company. So I needed to look for work, and I didn't want to buy the company because it was enough feast or famine for me too. And my wife decided that it was time to move to Calgary,
Okay,
and we did. I sent a resume to Kenworth. Kenworth snapped me right up.
awesome. And been there and sort of you started off as a regular technician and just
Yeah,
walk me.
I walked in from being a manager at one point in time, I guess, and hiring and firing people as well as fixing the buses. And I became the low man on the totem pole, but I was a journeyman. I did a whole bunch of repetitive work. I did a bunch of crappy work, and learned my paces and got into the good graces of some of the other people. And from that, I was able to move on to a night shift foreman position. Um, One of the things I can say about the trade is if you're given an opportunity, you're going to have to take it if you want to keep going throughout that opportunity. If you pass up an opportunity to become a supervisor of some sort, it's going to be very difficult for you to move on. So I took it. My wife didn't like it very much, but we kept going. And after that, Hal finished off, I moved into a foreman position on the day floor. Um, and then the opportunity was given to me after the service manager left at the time, and it was offered to me. I took it, grabbed the football, and I ran pretty hard because there was a lot of changes I felt like I could make at that point in time, and I felt like I could be effective.
Right. And so just because opportunities aren't just sort of given.
Well, they're
Usually,
earned for sure.
right, and usually previous service managers or directors keep an eye out for potential leads, foremen, leaders in the organization. What do you think kind of sets you apart from another technician that started at the same time with the same experience?
Without any doubt, I think I came to the table with an electrical experience, a good diagnostic experience as far as working on buses. They're heavily they're heavy into the electrical. So basically, that's was a rare commodity at the time. I think it worked out well for me getting a job there. But once I worked at Kenworth, I think just hard work and determination. Um, Also doing a lot of work outside of work. Training online, learning the platforms that the company uses, understanding how the trucks work. I mean, I came to Kenworth as a journeyman technician, but I worked on buses, and trucks are a completely different animal. So it was a retool completely, and it took a lot of work. It took a lot of determination to just sit down at nighttime or sit down at 5 o'clock in the morning when my kids weren't crying and get stuff done.
Yeah, and you hear that a lot nowadays when technicians are asked for additional training or online training or to do training after hours on their own time in order to be selected to go somewhere else for training in the US or things like that. And
That's right.
you get pushback saying, well, no, I'm not doing it unless you pay me for that additional training. What do you say to that?
I don't have a lot of trouble with that in my shop. I find that the people that I select to hire are dedicated people that want to learn, and I think that's a big part, a big check mark to really look for. Um, you should want to learn. You should always want to continue learning, and if you're not a person that wants to learn and you want to be paid to learn, um, that's the guy that's just being paid to work, and you don't want a guy that's being paid to work. You want passion, and passion comes with training and learning, and that's the kind of person that you're going to want to try to look for. So as far as I can say, as far as training goes, I tell people that I want them to go off to send away training. I'm not going to say that technicians don't go to away to training with a buddy of theirs or something like that, and they don't have a good time. I mean, they go to baseball games, they do whatever, but when they're in training, they're doing their training and they're successful for it. And in order to get that type of a holiday vacation, training vacation, I guess you could call it, you're going to have to do a little bit of pre-work.
So a technician leaves rarely, or more likely, you're expanding, you're busy, you need to fill an additional role or another shop. Just walk me big picture of how you get the ad out and then sort of your recruitment process or from start to finish, but big picture because we'll get into the nuances a little bit later on.
Absolutely. Like realistically speaking, obviously market demands if you need another person, or maybe you have a plan to get a couple more people in just to get ready for something that might be coming down the horizon. I would say that I would probably engage my HR department. It's pretty busy being a service manager, so I'd engage my HR department because they're the professionals. They log into Indeed and probably use a one of those type of platforms to create an ad. We discuss the ad, we discuss wage, we discuss what's going to be to put onto the ad. Um, After the ad goes out, I like myself personally. I enjoy to have the all the applicants come to me. I don't want any pre-screening done. I don't care if I get somebody that's just a dishwasher or whatever. I mean, I can go over those ones, but maybe I'm looking for a shop kid and I'm looking for somebody that's going to make a shot in the dark. It doesn't matter. Um, Everybody that applies deserves to be looked at, and from there, that process is selected through what I'm looking for qualifications for that perfect role, whether it's an advisor up front, whether it's a technician, whether it's just a shop hand. And from those roles, we can determine how good they are or whether they're applicable for it. We engage in conversation, whether it's a phone call or email. A lot of people are actually working, so calling them during business hours sometimes doesn't work. So I engage in email with them to start out to see if they're interested, and then we set up a time to have a conversation. Um, Through that conversation, I get a sense of who they are, and then we go from there and we select an interview date and away we go.
Okay. One of the biggest issues is time, like you said. If time and resources weren't an issue and candidates were willing to wait or go through any hoops that you give them, what would you add to your current process that you just don't have the time or the resources to do a proper job?
I'd probably hire a unicorn hunter.
Okay.
In all honesty, because if time and resources weren't an option, I mean, you'd find the perfect person every single time. Um, but perfect people aren't always found. I believe that perfect people are made, and you're not going to always find your diamond in the rough. So you gotta recognize potential,
Okay.
and that's a big part.
Would you throw any pre-tests or pre-diagnostic or like a half-day trial run that you would pay for them and see how, like, sometimes you have in post-secondaries where, or in the what is it, the trade games? I'm missing it. What's the Olympic trades called?
The
Um,
Olympic traits, as in
it,
like Skills Canada,
Skills
Skills
Canada,
Alberta,
right?
like
So
yeah,
where they have X amount of time to figure out
yeah.
diagnostic. Would you put that in if it was a feasible, reasonable thing to do?
The kids basically, because that's a youth program. The kids basically that go in those skills programs, we actually had them come from our shop as well, uh, because you can put them in that trade skills competition up until a certain age. So it's a very important thing. And I mean, if they come in with a trades medal or something like that, that's a huge thing. But that's a diamond in the rough. The very few people go into that kind of thing. Don't expect to see it, but it does happen,
Okay.
for sure.
What do you think about the job ad? Is it important to talk about company vision, company spirit, how wonderful the companies work for, all the benefits, or is it good enough just to put the job posting? I'm looking for a heavy duty mechanic. Here's the company, you know the brand, apply if you want, don't apply. Or do you have to
Yeah,
sweeten up the job posting?
I don't think you have to sweeten the job posting. Well, I think it depends on who you are. If you're a jobber shop that struggles to get mechanics or struggles to get people in the door to apply because they don't have online presence or they just don't have the uh, the pedigree that goes with being a dealer or something along those lines, um, you might have to jazz it up a little bit in order to entice people. A lot of times those shops might have to pay more, or a lot of times they're just picking people that aren't very good sometimes. In the other side of the world, if you're at dealers or engine manufacturers or any of that kind of stuff, they have enough online presence and pedigree that there's a fairly steady flow of people that want to get in the door at that echelon of work.
All right. So once you start getting open the floodgates and people start applying, how do you pre-screen those resumes just initially, whether, the maybes and the definite no's? What are some of your techniques for pre-screening resumes?
Right. Well, a huge part, and probably the first thing I'm going to look at is obviously relevant experience for the position that I'm hiring, whether it be journeyman or apprentice. However, another huge part of the resume, and I mean, I would almost tell people that are writing resumes to just leave jobs out, because if you are posting and that you're working at a place every 6 months, you're hoping that somebody understands that that essentially, I understand you just weren't happy where you're at, but this is the place for you. I mean, you need people that are going to actually dig in and try hard. And if it takes 2 years for you to realize that you don't like it there, fine. But 6 months, you didn't even try. So that's another thing that I'll screen for heavily. After that, sometimes I look for guy or girl, depending on what I'm hiring for. I'm not profiling, but at the same time, sometimes in the sales world, it's better to soften the blow. However, with technicians, it's very important to maintain their length of jobs, their skill sets. After that, I look at their hobbies. I honestly do. I mean, most people just say it's a crappy thing to put on the bottom. Passionate mechanics have passionate mechanic-like hobbies, and
Such as,
I'm not talking about a kid that writes that he does oil changes with his dad on his driveway. No, these guys are motorbikers. These guys are quadders. Um, Whatever. Demolition derby would be a sweet guy to have. You never know, right? So the hobbies are important. I look for people that are passionate about other things, like if they're into camping or hiking or biking, and when that person comes in for the interview, and you can look at them and they say their hobbies, you know if they're actually full of BS or not with the hobbies that they write. This guy's a hiker and a biker and does motocross, and he comes in and he can't sit on a bike. Yeah, he's not, so you look for the red flags.
Okay. Do you use any kind of ranking system when you're going through the resumes? Do you score them in any kind of way?
Uh, Generally, I just do a traditional score out of 10, but I do a couple of different scores. On my resumes, usually there's a few numbers written down there. I might have, he's a 7 out of 10 on appearance as far as how he represented himself when he came in for interview. Um, he's a 8 out of 10 on his resume as far as qualifications and skills go. Uh, but maybe some of his social cues and some other stuff might rank lower. So I usually rank a few things up, kind of get an average for him, and from that, I also use a little bit of feeling. It's,
No, fair enough.
you get gut instinct. Sometimes you can't replace it.
Yeah, it's called experience.
Fair enough. I
Um,
started managing when I was 19, so I was pretty accustomed to it when it started.
so why would it be important for a mechanic who's on coveralls and covered in grease all day to come in? Why does appearance then matter if they can
Well,
do the job?
I have hired many people that came in looking slovenly because they came in on their lunch break for an interview. That shows me commitment. That shows me a level of dedication to get here on their lunch break and try to make something happen for their life. Um, Other than that, if they're not employed and they come in wearing flip flops and shorts and just general, like in disrepair in manner speaking, I don't think it shows a level of professionalism that I'd be looking for. Professionals like to train. Professionals like to uh, commit to the work environment so that they're not setting cancer bombs off or causing technicians to cause upheavals. They're professionals. They're there to work. They're there to better themselves and their families, and they're basically there to be part of the team and be part of the company success.
When they come in, how do you formulate your questions? Do you have a standard set of questions that you ask and then sort of customize it to each person? How does that look like?
I have asked a few standardized questions before, and I find that I don't like them very much. I like to generate my questions from when they walk in the door, in the sense that, I mean, I've done it long enough. It's not like my first guy, I had a list on my desk. Okay. The first guy I ever hired, I put a list on my desk and asked him all the questions like a robot. And didn't get a sense of who the person was. So I think the big part of it for me is that when they come in, depending on how they're dressed, depending on what they look like, depending on a whole bunch of factors, I generate a bunch of questions. Um, some of them to throw them off guard, just to see how they react. But in all manner of fact, it's a getting. I ask them questions to get a sense of their personality. Um, and I really drive hard to get a sense of who that person is, because you can't just hire skill set alone all the time. Not sometimes when you're looking for 4 or 5 guys in a larger company, you don't have the luxury of getting 4 diamonds in the rough at one time unless you're willing to wait a year. If you got to hire people that are breathing and willing to learn, you hire that attitude, and that attitude you can run with.
So say I walked into the door and I want to get into the trades. Would be some of the questions that you would uh, um generate
Try
for
to.
me?
If somebody's trying to get into the trades, as in they're a new foot in the door, it's very difficult to get into the trades. There are a lot of people. It's a good living. I mean, there are a lot of tradespeople in Alberta. There are a lot of mechanics. There are a lot of heavy equipment technicians, heavy duty guys, agriculture technicians. So there is a whole bunch of stuff that you have to think about. And with all of that, with all of the people that are out there, if you want to get your foot in the door, you kind of have to have a star on your resume. You got to have something when you're handing it out. You can't have had just making ice cream at Dairy Queen and handing out blizzards. I mean, that's just not going to cut it. With that, you're going to have to take a pre-employment program. I hire heavily out of a couple of different pre-employment programs that happen around Calgary. I also focus on some other programs in Calgary that help out disenfranchised people that are looking for an opportunity. I mean, in all honesty, those people that are willing to work hard, they're from a less better circumstances. They're hungry. If you find the right guy, that guy is hungry, and he's willing to learn, and they don't leave you.
So if you have zero experience, your best bet is to reach out to one of these pre-employment programs and
Yeah,
they have better connections with shops than you just going on your own.
Absolutely. I mean, most of the pre-employment programs offer off a practicum, where you go to a shop environment, you test it out. They test you out, you test them out, and you find out if you're a right fit. So it really works out well that way. There's other programs that are available that give you a good basic skill set, get you set up with a couple of things, and they give you a really good platform in order to get interviews and stuff done, and they send out resume packets. So, you're always looking to help the next best guy.
So what would be some of the questions you would ask a seasoned journeyman?
Often I'll ask a seasoned journeyman a few questions about like who he is and how his past experience have been at work. Um, those ones are a little bit tougher in order to he can just kind of BS his way through it. So those are fluffy questions. There's no doubt about it, but it gets him started. And then I start to ask him more questions. I'd like to ask him a question about if a certain event is if you're doing a certain repair and it starts going this direction, what's your strategy and what's your kind of planning as far as getting that back on course, figuring it out. There's repairs nowadays with the technology and stuff out there that get many 20, 30 hours deep, and you're lost in a field. And if I'm looking for a guy that's a seasoned journeyman, I need that guy to tell me how to get back out and get back on a path.
What's your favorite question to ask?
Man, I don't even use a favorite question. I ask all different questions every single time. I honestly let the interview guide itself, because he's going to be working for me in a trusted relationship. I don't have to direct the interview and see how he reacts all the time. I like to see how he directs it as well. Um, so as far as a favorite question, I would always ask all of them, why would you want to work at this heavy duty facility? Why would you want to work here? Um, and from that answer, I mean, I ask it all the time. I get mostly the same answer
Which is?
because of where I work as a service manager. People say they want to be on the top. That's what it boils down to. And in all honesty, I expect that, obviously. I have hired a few people that give me some very odd answers for that question because I expected them to say because I want to work at the top of the echelon and whatever. But they've actually they've said some doozies in the past because you know they want to be recognized. If somebody stands out in your mind when you got 30 resumes to go through, it's all honesty, that guy's probably going to get a call or a call back. I do that often enough as well. If I'm not sure about somebody, I'll bring them back for a second round. With that second round comes a little bit more confidence in his corner. Maybe they're just somebody that's just a little bit nervous. It's tough to recognize that, but you should recognize when somebody's being nervous, and give them that other opportunity because nerves like anybody. That's why I don't really like a couple day trial or a half day trial. Uh, that's a heavy shop to be in that kind of capacity. Uh, and to come in and walking in like that, I mean, you're just gonna bury yourself.
Right. And you mentioned that having the conversation flow and both individuals being engaged in that conversation, you and that other person. What are some other good signs that are going for that candidate during that interview?
For me, a big point of it would be, in all honesty, it's old school. It's traditional. I like a handshake, a proper handshake. I don't need a wet noodle. I don't need a wet glove. And I want them to look me in the eye when they give me a handshake because I want a little bit of confidence on their side. I mean, that is literally the first impression. If you give me a wet noodle and look down at my shoes when you handshake my hand, there is zero chance that this interview is going to go well for you. And that's it. That's it. Nutshell. If you can't give me a good handshake and a good look in the eye, and I don't care, guy, girl, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just confidence is a huge part of being a good technician because I don't want to babysit, and neither does the foreman. They want people that are going to go out and perform and do proper repairs.
So wet noodle is a bad sign. What are some other bad signs?
Honestly, I use, like I said, the appearance thing for the dress and stuff like that. I know some people don't have a lot of money, but effort can be noticed. I'm not talking about coming in there in a three-piece suit. That's ridiculous. I'm just saying, put a bloody effort in. Don't come in like it's Sunday morning. Uh, you know, that's phase two. I mean, I'd say three-quarters of the interviews decided right when they walk in. Of 10 applicants, you're probably going to disregard 7 right off the bat because of how they present themselves, you know. And I'm obviously looking for people that are, well, they're more like I am in the sense that, I feel like I've done a good job and I'm successful, and I want to hire people I get along with because those are people that are passionate to get stuff done.
What do you think about references? Are they a waste of time?
Today, it depends. In all honesty, I hate saying it depends because there's a lot of gray area here. Uh, if they work at large companies, I don't bother because they're going to give me a bunch of performance numbers that I don't really care about. I do care about performance numbers, don't get me wrong, but if they're in the wrong environment, fostered under the wrong people, doing the wrong jobs, then they're not performing under their most. It's my job to make them perform onto their utmost abilities, and whether I recognize where that should be or not. Um, but they they do they need to be focused.
Right. So what do you do with references?
Not much.
Okay.
I I honestly, I call them if I know them, if they're friends of the network, as it were, because you can talk candidly and you can actually have a proper conversation about a person, and they'll let you know. And sometimes you got to understand who the person is on the other end of the phone. If mechanics that are really good, if they leave an organization, the organization is never super happy for them because that's a huge hole to leave, and you are going to get negative feedback if you're candid as well. And and also in today's day and age, when you're on a big network like that, you almost can't be negative on it. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for that he showed up to work every day? Well, I got 90 days to figure him out like that anyway. I'm not that worried about that. I mean, that's my risk, right? Then I'm willing to take it.
So rarely does this happen, but let's say you have three, five stellar technicians. I mean, all five of them could do the job. How do you make a choice if you can only hire one?
Got end of story. That's kind of it. I mean, if you're looking at 9 out of 10 resumes sitting on your desk, and obviously, if they all have the same relevant experience, they all have the same relevant pedigree. If they're the same, yeah, you just kind of go by gut. You're hiring that guy that you feel better about than the rest.
Okay, so you've decided on an individual. Um, uh, what's the hiring process look like then?
Well, after we've decided on them, obviously, we'll let the candidates that applied know. We'll let the candidate that won know first, because if he declines after a bit, you might want to let one of the other ones know.
Okay,
But
great
however,
tip. Oh, I got a great tip there. Okay,
don't
always make sure your number one candidate says yes first.
correct, and they can still say no because they still reject job packages. But it happens. The guys that usually get rejected will say yes after the fact, and they'll know they're second best, and you're going to have to build their confidence up. But uh,
How does that telephone conversation go?
usually that telephone, they're usually really happy. They're very happy that they got the job, and I usually just tell them some expectations as far as what they can expect. Obviously, you send an employment offer out, or something along those lines. You discuss how much money they're going to make. A lot of guys are so excited to get the job, they don't even know how much money they're going to make. They have no idea until they get their employment offer, and then they're usually happy enough. Uh, that being said, after the employment offer goes out, they sign it, send it back, and we start making plans for their arrival. They bring their toolboxes and uh, introductions to staff that they're going to be working with, introductions to other staff. Take them around, make them feel a little bit welcome, show them the coffee machine, important stuff like that, snack machines. Where Subway is for lunch, whatever. You give them the grand tour. There's safety in there too, but let's not get too carried away. Uh, they go upstairs for a big HR yawn that's pretty awesome, and they learn a bunch of stuff. They learn how to drive forklifts and all that kind of thing, and be safe in our work environment.
How does orientation look for a seasoned journeyman technician in the shop?
Shop wise, a seasoned journeyman's gonna, you're gonna get introduced to all the guys. You're gonna learn where the safety exits are, obviously, and stuff like that. But uh, seasoned journeyman is really, it's just gonna be feet to the fire. We're gonna see how he performs on his own a little bit. If you see him kind of stumbling a bit because he doesn't know what he's doing, or doesn't know where to find stuff, obviously, I would expect the guys on the team that always know that a new person on the team is important because another guy might go. So you have to make sure that those guys are they feel like they're part of the team. They're being supported. Um, Sometimes a lot of times I won't give them a full out like technician number where they're full on work orders. They'll just kind of shadow a little bit. They'll help out a little bit where they're not being measured or gauged. They're just getting a sense of the land. It's important in our industry anyway to get a sense of the land. I mean, people that are nervous, people that are making mistakes that are nervous mistakes are unsafe, and that's a problem for everybody.
So a seasoned technician, how many months do you expect them to be at 90% efficiency?
So somebody that has, say, 5 or 6 years journeyman experience working at the level that we work at in our shop. Um, well, I'd hope to have a really good handle on it by the end of probationary period of 90 days. Whether you can have a probationary period or not, it doesn't matter. It's everybody gets a test drive. It doesn't matter. You have to fit in.
And
You have to feel good.
how would orientation differ for a first year, or just came straight from one of the employment programs,
Right.
is really green, um, doesn't know a lot? How would their orientation look different?
Uh, as part of the apprenticeship, I guess they're green enough. They're going to need to be in full shadow mode where they're learning some processes. I want supervisors to get an idea of how their hand tool use is, how their safety is. They're going to get a heavier lean on safety as well because their I guess acquired knowledge or knee-jerk safety reactions are well, they're non-existent. So they have to do things in the right process. They have to be taught the hard, safe way, and then after that, they get fostered in. It's a big tool for me to watch how they get in with the other technicians in the shop. The family atmosphere that we have and that I like to foster in a shop is important to me. And if there's somebody that's either causing a lot of dissension, causing a lot of grading, that's a problem for me. So in their first 90 days, it's a big deal for them to garner support. They need to be asked to be helping. They need to be asked to go and help because they're helpful people, and people want to work with them.
So other than sort of email, the Indeed ATS or anything like that, do you use any tools or technologies or online tools for your recruitment process, or those are pretty much it?
Other than stuff coming across the counter, like as far as people just walking in, walk-ins, there's also a lot of technicians that have friends that are technicians. you know and if this technician's a very good technician and I trust him and stuff like that, and absolutely, I mean, let's entertain an interview for sure. You want an immediate foot in the door, and that's know a good guy where you work. And
Oh,
that happens. I mean, we have friends that work, and if those friends have friends, and then we get a bigger friendly atmosphere where you get some healthy competition on who wants to be better than the next guy or do a job faster than the next guy, and it's friendly and healthy, and it makes cash.
Do you see any positive or negative trends in recruitment selection?
It's getting much harder now. I find that 10 years ago when I started hiring people, in like young people or in the trade, it's changed by leaps and bounds. I mean, you were hiring hard knock mechanic, muscle car head kids that used to like to tear crap apart in their garage. Uh, Now these kids are they just want a job. They want life outside of work. The work life balance is very important to the new pedigree. Um, it's tough. It's really tough. So that's kind of why the big shift towards hiring on attitude became part of my hiring practice, is because finding people that were passionate about mechanics for their whole life it's getting harder because, I mean, if you didn't have a cell phone as a kid when you were young, and so what did you do? When you occupied your time with things that interested you. Well, cell phones and YouTube interest everyone. So everybody's doing that. So you're losing that touch with that mechanical kid who wants to take crap apart. 4 years old taking mom's VCR apart, can't put it back together. It doesn't matter,
So
right?
you mention this often. They can't think with their hands. What does that
Right.
mean?
Um, Mechanical aptitude is something where you look at things. I mean, it's basically an engineer that just didn't like math. It's what it goes down to. Engineers love their math and love to build stuff that goes together. Mechanics are exactly the same way, but they see it in an exploded view. They see things differently. They understand that you can't take these parts off without doing these parts. When you talk about fuel system processes in interviews, or you talk about stuff, you look for logic, and you can call it logic because you have to learn it, but it's logical. Stuff follow. If this is going wrong with this component, what could be the issue? I mean, it's logical. You have to deduce, and that's a huge part.
What kind of final advice, or what advice, and this is going to be multiple, you're going to be giving a lot of advice in this next section. So
Fair.
just
Yeah, great.
start off with, what advice would you give high school students that
Hmm.
are interested in maybe the trades? They think, maybe university's not for them, um, but
Hmm.
they know that they don't want to be working at McDonald's,
Hmm.
and they're thinking about maybe a trade, but they can't get hired because they don't have the experience. They don't
Hmm.
have the experience, so they can't get hired. What advice would you give to high school students?
High school students, there's options for them in the mechanics trade and in the electrical and plumbing trades as well. Um, I'm sure there is in hairdressing and whatever. I mean, there's many trades in Alberta, but as far as the heavy equipment trade goes, um, a big thing would be to try to get involved. If you're passionate about mechanics, get into the mechanics classes in high school. I would say that a huge thing for me, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but if I'm hiring a young student, um, his grades are extremely important to me. School grades. I'm not hiring dummies out of high school. I don't need those people. Those people aren't McDonald's. Those people are running honey wagons, pulling out outhouses. That's what they're for. The people that are passionate about working hard, whether it's at school or working hard at the workforce, working hard on keeping their act together, working hard on whatever. Those are people that are working hard. That's built into them. I don't have I don't have a lot of time for people that don't give a crap about school and don't give a crap about anything. And mechanics is an easy way to go, and that's one of the biggest things that we fight. I mean, I go to high schools, I go to wrap things. I'm on boards as far as the apprenticeship goes, because I'm trying to push that stupid kids don't belong in mechanics. And I'm not saying all kids are stupid, don't get me wrong, and kids aren't stupid. It's being very harsh and very abrupt, but kids that aren't willing to invest in their own future don't have a future. And unfortunately, you're looking for that kind of stuff. And I look for good grades because I need people that are smart. I need people that will deduce. I need people that'll figure things out. Problem solvers, that's what it's all about. And if you're not willing to work hard at school, are you really willing to work hard for me?
What would you tell a parent that their child is interested in the trades and they're going, hell no, you're going to university?
I've walked a couple miles in their shoes. I've done that. I also did university as well. I did well at university, but I just didn't get the whole program. I like to touch stuff with my hands. I'm a physical person that likes to physically do work, and that's just kind of the way I'm built. That's how I'm programmed. And some people are like that. I would honestly say you're going to have to try to talk to them. You're going to have to try to say, I mean, there's stuff on the internet you can look it up where you look at a person that goes through the trades all the way through their career and successfully. I mean, I'm not talking about somebody that's fired and gets a new job every 2 weeks, but he goes through the trade as a successful tradesperson. Um, his earning potential isn't a whole lot off anybody that goes to university on average. I mean, don't get me wrong, people that go to university, sometimes they get rich, but so do tradespeople. It
Yeah,
just,
start their own business, right?
you know, I mean, anybody that's going to scoff at $100,000 a year as an income I know a lot of people that went to university have BAs. I know master's people that don't make near that much money. They make 65 in a cubicle. How's your life?
Yeah.
Right. So get out there and convince people that it's a viable option for you as far as work goes. But a big thing is in high schools, and I've been fighting this for years, is the guidance counselors push kids that don't do well in school into trades.
Right. And that's just a bad idea.
Exactly.
What advice would you give technicians? And you truly believe that fitting in is very important to fitting in into the team in order to
Right.
have a. So, what advice would you give to technicians that might be struggling in the shop
Mhm.
and feel like they're being not ostracized, but they don't feel as part of the team.
They're being pushed out. Well, I mean, sometimes you have to kind of look whether or not you fit with the personality profile of what the company is trying to achieve. Um, I'm not saying that there's ideologies that don't belong. I'm not saying that it's a race religion thing. I'm just saying it's straight up personality. Some people rub people the wrong way, and that's just what happens. And if you have a team of 40 people, that 36 of them, are of the same sort of personality types, then it's going to be pretty hard to come in as somebody that's way off to the left, and you're going to feel uh, pushed out. Then you're going to be defensive. And unfortunately, from that defensive position, I mean, there's ways back in. Uh, you don't have to change your personality to be back in. You just have to be open-minded. And if you're working hard and you're dedicated and you're passionate and you're being a generous person, people will generally that's who you're trying to hire. I mean, you don't want to have a bunch of knucklehead people that are super aggressive or anything like that. I mean, you're trying to hire the most well-balanced people you can that fit the widest spectrum of profile. And from that, I mean, if you're not fitting in with that broad of a spectrum, maybe you should look at what you might want to do, or maybe you don't have a passion for the trades and you're just there for a job. I can tell you that I've had people over the years that you knew they were just there for a job, and you're in a shop full of people that are passionate about mechanics. You're not going to fit in with those guys.
And you said usually the question that you receive, or the answer you receive most is that I want to be in your shoes one day. I want to be a service manager. What advice would you give individuals that can everyone be a service manager? And then what
No.
kind of advice and why not?
Well, you look for people like, I mean, obviously as a service manager, one of your biggest jobs and is just succession planning. I mean, you have to plan who's your next foreman just in case something happens. You have to plan who your next go-to tech guy is, who you're going to bring up from the ranks, who's going to take your job when you win the lottery or get hit by a bus, whatever. But or you move on. I mean, service managers move on all the time. Burnout rates are pretty high too because it's a high stress job. um, absolutely, you have to consistently do that and
And
keep
so
pushing forward
if a technician or a foreman wants that service role, what can he do currently
to move
to
on.
move on, to prepare, not and when that opportunity arises that they can step up rather than sort of be unprepared, not be interested, and then all of a sudden a position applies and they go, I would like this position, and it kind of blinds management going, what? Like
This guy.
yeah, you've never once mentioned
Mhm.
that you would be ever interested in this.
Um, I don't think it's even necessarily the person that wants the job. I don't think it's necessarily the person that asked for the job. I don't think it's that guy. The guy as a succession planner is my replacement, I guess I would say, is uh, who are the techs gravitating around? Who are they going to? Who do they respect the most? And when you start drilling in on that guy that is having everybody gravitate, having everybody ask him questions, having everybody ask him for help, or he's lending a hand without being asked, or saying, "Hey, you need a hand with this," or "I've seen this repair before, and this is what I've done to remedy the situation." You're looking for that guy. That's the guy that you want to do it, and you don't even have to tell him that. You just keep fostering that relationship. You keep fostering that, and then when the time comes, you start planting that seed, and
No,
away we go.
that's some good advice. Last advice for recruiters. It's harder and harder to find tradespeople, qualified tradespeople.
Mhm,
We refer to them as A, B, and C technicians. Those
mhm,
A technicians tend to be paid well and stay where they are.
mhm.
Bs tend to, they'll jump for a buck or two, but it takes a while. And Cs just rotate from company to company. They're the first ones to be
Mhm.
laid off,
Yep.
and that sort of thing. So, what kind of advice would you give recruiters who are trying to find technicians?
A. Everybody that wants their A game. A type players are where they are and stay where they are because they're happy where they are. Happy people make good employees, and but it's been said time and time again, right? I mean, money doesn't usually make people leave. Bad management or bad atmosphere. End of story. Like if you don't like where you are for half your day, you're not going to stay there. Um, you don't become a really good top end mechanic in a crappy environment. You were a top end mechanic when you went to a crappy environment, and you usually leave within about 3 months and go, this is crap. So he's moved on to bigger and better pastures. I mean, do you get those guys once in a while? I guess, but those are the unicorn hunting guys.
Right.
So as far as recruiters go, it's a very tough environment because there's not good people looking for work. There are people that have been let go in the 90% range,
Or
right?
not happy.
Or not happy, but there, I'd say it's far less. I get a lot more resumes that have people skipping every 6 months than I do get people that have 10 years experience at a place and all of a sudden they're looking for a job. Those people are rare. And I love, if I get a resume with a guy that has 10 years pedigree experience in exactly what I'm looking for, I mean, that's the diamond in the rough, right?
So as a recruiter, how could I tap the A pool?
There isn't one. I think as a recruiter, you have to be able to talk to the applicants more so, and understand who you're hiring. You need to sell people. It sounds bad, I guess. You're selling people, but I mean, you're not selling a resume. You're selling a person, and you need to have, you need to be. You're like a draft agent for a professional NHL team or something like that, or you're a scout. You're looking for talent. You're not finding it by resume. You're going to see them. You're understanding that this is a good guy and he's gonna run far. He's gonna run fast. He's gonna whatever. He's gonna be very smart for something. And so I think recruiters need to be educated in what people are looking for in mechanics, not just a piece of paper that says I can do a job. They
Um,
need to look for attitude and they need to be excited about getting people jobs.
Fair enough. So what are some of the programs that you would recommend for people that are sort of interested in getting into the trades?
Depending on what your situation is, I mean, if you're a high school student, obviously get into the RAP program. That's the Registered Apprenticeship Program through Alberta high schools. You're valid in that program from grades 10 up through graduation in grade 12. Um, After that, there's the post-secondary options where whether it's SATE or NATE or whatever, SATE has one that's a good diesel equipment technician program. You come out of that with your first and second year exams. You just need some hours. Uh, you know, those are foot in the door programs because I also get to go visit students at the school. I participate in the programs. They do a practicum program as well, where they almost cycle the entire class through your shop, and everybody gets a taste of it, and the shop also gets a taste of it. When I get a test drive people, I don't interview them a whole lot. I bring them in, I say, let's go. Uh, they go in, they test drive, and the only feedback I care about is the shops say this is a good guy, I like this guy, that's the guy. And I think that's maybe a big part of it. I mean, if I'm hiring off the street or I'm hiring a seasoned person, I'm interviewing and we're doing that, and that's the way it goes. But if I'm bringing in a practicum guy, I mean, I'm 100% shop reliable for that. He's part of the team and he fits in with everybody. After that, you can be you can be not given opportunity. You can be somebody that's over the age of 19. There's a program called Motive Action that basically takes in people through Alberta Works for support. These people are paid. Unemployment basically while they're at school, and they complete these 6 week or 12-week practicums where they go to school, they learn some basic skills and job skills, then they come into the shop environment for quite a few weeks, and then they go back into the school platform, and then they come back into the shop for 12 weeks, and from there jobs are made. I can honestly say that I have about 20% of my workforce that's come out of that program because those people know what it likes to have crappy lives, and they know what it's like when they can look up and they can see that they have a future, and man, those guys are passionate and they work hard.
Uh, And leave us with some final words of wisdom. Something that we haven't covered that you feel that we should have addressed or chatted, or just sort of
Well,
final
I'll
word.
I'll try. I guess basically the way I live my life is I try to keep my work-life balance as the same thing. Um, Work life is like family. You're having fun. You got to laugh a lot. This is if you're never laughing at work. I mean, what are you doing there? You should be joking around. Everybody should be having a really good time, and you have to be productive. Don't get me wrong. We're not partying, but we're smiling. We're having a good time. There's, it's the quintessential high fives. Like you're getting stuff done, and that is super important. That you can have a good work-life environment, and then you can go home and have a good work-life or like life environment outside of work. You never take your work home, and you never bring your life to work, and they're separate. But man, just be happy because life's too short.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully this has, I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for giving up your evening with me. I can't thank you enough. Hopefully there was some tidbits in there for everyone, from recruiters to people trying to get into the trade, to just future people that want leadership roles, that
Mm,
if people aren't gravitating to you, that you're not a natural leader in the shop. When an opportunity comes up for lead hand or foreman or service manager, and you put your hat into the ring, chances are you're gonna be overlooked because
don't be
people aren't.
surprised.
Yeah, don't be surprised. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the interview. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click on notifications so you don't miss the next one.